Saudi Arabia, tweets the president, has now agreed to spend the necessary money needed to help rebuild Syria instead of the United States. See? Isn't it nice when immensely wealthy countries help rebuild their neighbors rather than a great country, the U.S., that is 5,000 miles away? Thanks to Saudi A, tweets the president. All right, former National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, John Hanna, is our next guest. All right, so we'll start there, John. Why not? It's the latest in from the president on the topic that, funny enough, you and I were going to talk about anyway, and he's making the case better them than us, I guess. What do you make of it?
Well, this is a kind of old commitment. The Saudis had said they were going to devote $100 million to help rebuild those parts of Syria liberated by U.S. and Kurdish forces. Now, when if you take the U.S. out of that equation and Syria is left to Russia, Iran, the Assad regime, and ISIS, or to some version of chaos, it's not quite clear that any amount of money is going to help rebuild Syria.
Okay, so to be clear, you know these matters far better than I would. You're saying this was already on the table. This was already a known to people who follow this kind of thing. And if anything, the U.S. move might put it in jeopardy?
Absolutely. I think Saudi money was committed months ago, something the president had gotten, but it was in the context of an American commitment to remain in eastern Syria and rebuild that part of Syria as a counterweight to Russia and the Assad regime in the east.
Okay, that's good context and puts the president's comments, which we just received, in some better context from John. All right, so let's talk big picture about what we're doing here. With the United States pulling out of Syria, you know the criticisms have come from the left and the right of this president, essentially saying that it's as Lindsey Graham said, an Obama-like mistake, similar to when we pulled out of Iraq, and that ISIS, even if it has been beaten down, if not defeated, could come back stronger than ever, that kind of thing. What's your view on the risks here?
Well, I think any time virtually all of your enemies in theater are celebrating this decision, and all of our allies in the region, including those who have put their lives on the line to fight alongside American forces, when they're demoralized by what's happened and completely blindsided, I think you're having a bad day for American national security policy. And I think the very strong resignation letter by Secretary Mattis just underscores that right. We are walking into really dangerous territory here, potentially.
What do you say to the president, though, and his supporters who push back on that and say, it's people like you, John Hanna, you worked in a previous Republican administration. It's kind of this old guard or old way of thinking, establishment way of thinking that got us into wars we shouldn't have been in the past. That's why we're here, and I have to kind of course correct, and I promised my voters I would do so. What do you say to that argument?
Well, I say that, listen, fair-minded people can disagree over this question of whether or not we ought to begin really winding down these open-ended conflicts, but to do it in the way that the president has proceeded here, without any kind of consultation with his advisors, blindsiding ally, not ignoring the Congress, and not really having a plan in place to execute this in the best way possible and minimize the risk, I just think is irresponsible and dangerous, even if you agree with the president.
Fair enough, John. Thank you. And thank you for the context on Saudi Arabia. Good analysis, as always. We appreciate you coming on with us.
Thanks, Connell. Happy holidays.
You too, John Hanna.